Coach Zweifel, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking out the time of your day. I know you're a busy person, so let's kind of jump right into it. For the listeners at home, will you tell us a little bit about your background, kind of your motivation, and where you are currently?
Yes. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. My name is Michael Zweifel. I own Building Better Athletes, and have owned this for now for about 7 years.
Mm.
So basically, been kind of running this kind of private facility here for the past 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
What a lot of people don't know is also for the whole time, all those 7 years, I've also worked in the college setting. So 5 of those years so far have been as a part-time strength coach at a local university,
Mm-hmm.
and then some other, working with some other university teams during that time as well. So I have had my foot both in the private and public sectors.
Yeah. Wow.
Before that, I basically out of college, I coached a year of college football,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just kind of jumped into this actually while doing that as well. So
Wow.
pretty much since college, I've been running this business and trying to get things off the ground here.
I love it. So, what exactly would you say that your passion is in life, and why do you do what you do?
Yeah, great question. Just helping athletes, being around athletes, helping
Mm-hmm.
kids. I was very fortunate growing up as an athlete that I had really good coaches and mentors in my life,
Mm-hmm.
and they imparted me a ton of confidence, of wisdom and knowledge,
Yeah.
and they've had a huge impact in my life. And hopefully in this profession,
Mm-hmm.
the goal would be to kind of impact that same kind of impact and influence on some of my athletes that I get to work with. So
Mm.
my dad's a Hall of Fame football coach. I was kind of brought up into the coaching world.
Okay.
I grew up in a football locker room,
Yeah.
and had, like I said, very fortunate in high school to have some really good coaches and mentors. And so just trying to kind of, build off of what they gave me into the next generation of athletes.
I love it. Okay. So, what kind of made you go away from the college setting and working in college to kind of creating BBA?
Yeah. I just, even right now, I'm not quite sure. There are many aspects of kind of the college setting that are really attractive to me.
Yeah.
That I'm still kind of in the boat what I want to do long term.
Mm-hmm.
I love what I do here in the private sector and at BBA. It gives me a ton of freedom. I get to work with a huge variety of athletes. A lot of those handcuffs that are in the college setting, I don't have,
Yeah.
which is really great. But there are also many pros that come with the college setting that I would, really enjoy to have.
Mm-hmm.
I know one of the questions you had on there, Juan, was, what are some, things that you'd give advice for the business or owning a facility? And, 3 times a year we have interns,
Mm-hmm.
and each time I always ask them the first day, what do you want to do, 5-10 years from now? A lot of kids are always like, I want to own a facility like this.
Yeah.
I'm always like, nope, you do not. My number one piece is like, owning a business that is great, but it is a pain in the ass. It is a ton of hard work. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody. It's really not. It's not what it's all made out to be.
Yeah.
It's a hard obstacle and hard path to kind of pave yourself out in this field.
Yeah.
I always talk about there's no PTO, there's no holidays, there's no 6 days.
Yeah.
Right now for most college coaches, this last 2 weeks and probably for another week here are kind of times off. You got that kind of summer break, if you would, before summer kicks off.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as like that in the private sector.
Yeah.
You might get a day off for Christmas,
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. I mean, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
They're and so health insurance,
Yeah.
anything like that aren't provided in the private sector. It's a pain.
Yeah.
I just went yesterday to get prepared for the summer with clean supplies.
Yeah.
If someone does a mess in our bathroom,
Yeah.
I'm the one that's got to take care of it.
Yeah.
So, I always say I was very naive getting into this business, and
Yeah.
luckily that I was, because if I look back now, knowing what I know now, I don't know if I would get into it, because all those small nuances and obstacles that go into owning a business, when you're young and dumb and you kind of, I want to coach athletes,
Yeah.
you don't realize how many hours are spent outside of coaching. And that's my passion. My thing is I love being on the floor with athletes coaching.
Yeah.
But there's a ton of time spent outside of that,
Yeah.
on taxes, on your books in terms of incomes, expenses, answering phone calls, emails, cleaning,
Yeah.
maintenance around the facility. There's no one in like a college setting where they're doing that for you. I'm taking care of all that myself. So I know I went a little bit off on that question there, but I'm still debating and weighing what I want to do long term.
Yeah.
My wife and I, we don't have kids yet, but
Yeah.
obviously that's in our future plans.
Yeah.
I'm up at 4:30, every day at the facility at 5 a.m. and usually not getting home until about 9:30 every weekday.
Yeah.
And I've worked every weekend for the last 7 years.
Yeah.
most weekends it's Saturday and a Sunday. Obviously, that's not feasible with the family here. So it's still something that I'm weighing, whether, the public versus private, which one I want to do. But that's just some background for listeners that are maybe, are thinking about what field to go into. Talk with somebody in both fields to kind of get a feel for really what it's like.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that honesty, because you don't really hear that kind of stuff when people are, private facilities that they own themselves, right? You see a lot of the benefits of, like you said, the freedom and, not so many stringent rules from the NCAA and things like that. But at the same time, you're working longer hours, it sounds, longer hours, and, the buck ends with you. So if anything is skipped, it directly affects you. So it's like, you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot at points. So it's definitely a balance, and I think that's a really important point. That, like you said, a lot of young coaches, all they see is the logo, right? And they see dollar signs and things like that, but they don't see that hard work. So I really appreciate you being candid and just kind of sharing your honesty on that.
Yeah, and I think it's what it has to be. And it's like I said, I love it. I love what I do. I don't have anybody looking over my shoulder. I get a lot of freedom to do what I want creatively. I get to work with a lot of different athletes, which I like, different athletes from different sports, genders, different ages. So there's a lot of kind of fluctuations and flexibility working with those type of different athletes. But it's hard. And, from the private facility, some things that I see in the future, high schools and colleges are becoming an arms race, in terms of facilities. Those are 6-7 figure facilities that you're seeing from these high schools and colleges. If I want to buy a brand new, sore neck squat rack that costs $5,000, that's coming out of my pocket. All right, I'm not going to pay myself for the next 2 months now because I got to want to get a squat rack. I think the private sector gets a bad rap, and there are some bad coaches in the private sector that are kind of money grubbing and kind of, kind of steal money, if you would, from athletes. But for the most part, we just want to help athletes. And this is kind of just the path that I kind of stumbled into, circumstances. But we're here to help athletes. And a lot of things that you see us, doing, we're trying to provide for our families and just, make a living. So there is a little bit more self-marketing and advertising than there is in the public sector.
But it has to be.
Also, people is like, I have to, every athlete that comes in our door, we have to earn in some capacity. And I coach in the college setting. I have those athletes given to me. It's a whole different ball game when, I don't have to worry about some of the college athletes walking out and I don't like this, I can just walk away. They have to be in our sessions. They have to train with us. It's very simple. Like the athlete that comes in our doors, I have to earn and I have to keep, through our program. That's a whole different ball game. It's very difficult. So you might see some of this, I guess you could say, sly marketing or whatever it may be. Some people try to take credit for their athletes. I try not to do that, but obviously we try to promote and advertise and showcase our athletes that we get to work with, because that's, at the end of the day, is how we're trying to make a living. But we also, our number one goal, most coaches, is to impact our athletes' lives positively. And so it's just kind of the means that we have to go about it.
Most definitely. And so what would you say, I mean, obviously the business side is a new frontier along with a lot of that other stuff, right? What would you say resources that helped you kind of make up that gap as far as business knowledge?
Number one would be just learn by trial and error. Like I said, I was very naive going into this. And just stepping in 100%, you just learn stuff on the fly. I was also fortunate that where I'm at, I just had some good connections of friends that own private businesses. My sister being one of them, and another really close colleague. And just talking with them, how to set up an LLC, how to set up insurance, how to get up an accountant, all those things that you like. Holy crap! I got to do all this before I'm actually a legal entity. Going through the state, all those type of things. I was very fortunate to be able to bounce questions and ideas off of my sister and close colleagues to get some feedback and what do I actually have to do baseline to actually be a real legal entity. And so and knowing what's an LLC versus like an S corp or a C corp, and how do you protect yourself as an individual from if someone gets hurt, how can they protect yourself so they don't attack you and your individual assets. So all those things, like I said, very fortunate that I had very close friends, and I was kind of not just jumped into it, learned by trial. I would advise a lot of people in undergrad if you could take a business class or an entrepreneurship class, because all these things were very foreign to me.
Yeah.
How to set up, a spreadsheet of incomes and expenses, and you have to keep all your receipts, and what's a tax write-off, and what are the tax laws for a self-proprietor, all those things that I was like, I'm still learning. I still don't know what I'm even doing on at come tax season. I still don't quite understand all the nuances, but I'm sure everyone knows some sort of friend, family that is a business owner. So just talking with them and bouncing ideas off them is kind of the number one advice I'd give.
Yeah. I mean, I'm fatigued just kind of listening to all the things that you got to do. So that's tough. Okay, so let's dive a little bit more into that kind of training side, right? So what does your kind of training look like for different age groups?
Yes, for some different age groups. We try to, as best as possible, is give each of our athletes kind of the training that they each individually need.
Okay.
So all of our age groups their training will look different. Even though they might be in at the same time. And so one thing that we try to do is we individually program for all of our athletes that are basically 7th grade and above. They have like an individually prescribed program. So if we have 10 athletes in, they're all doing 10 different things based off, which we'll get into later, like an assessment and evaluation that we give them. So we try to, like I said, individually prescribe our training modalities for each person that comes in our gym. We have a young group, a youth fundamentals group, as we call them, and for them, it's really a game play-based program where, one thing I think as coaches that we sometimes get caught up on is that we have to understand like who's in front of us, like what is the population client that is standing in front of us, and what are their individual goals and priorities, not mine as a coach. So mine is always like, I want to put myself in the athlete's shoes. What is it that they want and they need, and then, what are they looking for, rather than what am I looking for them as a coach. So always being aware of the audience that's in front of you, and catering towards what is important for them. And so that's kind of the underlying theme, how I program for our athletes. And again, for me, it's youth athletes. I'm working with middle school, high school athletes. 15-20% of them will go on to play college sports. So my goal isn't always like maximizing sport performance, is maximize their experience, maximizing what they take away from us to kind of take them on for a long-term journey, rather than just trying to eke out the last 1-2-3% of sports performance.
I like that. Okay, and I think that's really important, but that also kind of ties into the next question, right? So what's kind of your approach to long-term athletic development, right? So you say you get a kid early middle school. What does that kind of look like through his or her transition throughout high school?
Yeah, and that's a really great question. I know LTAD is really important, and it's becoming a big topic. I personally just, like I said, I don't follow it, to be honest with you. I think it's short-sighted in my opinion. I think usually what it is, we're obsessed with this kind of athlete and sport kind of model that we try to maximize sport and athletic performance for someone that's like 18 or 22 years of age. I think we're not setting up for quite success for the next 50, 60 years of their life. So for me, I look at it more of a long-term kind of movement or long-term human development. What tools can I give them that they can partake and take with them for the rest of their lives? So like I said, I'm not trying to max out the last 1-2-3% of their sport performance when they turn 18, when they're in high school and senior, and then they're done with sports. And they're married to that. I think all these LTAD, and I think they do a good job, and maybe I'm misinterpreting the athletic part, but I think athletes are really married and kind of identified to being an athlete. And I was an athlete that I played in the NFL, very short term, but I was in the NFL. I was at kind of the highest level, and I was a football player. But now what do I do for the next 60 years of my life? So I want to, get my athletes not being married or identified as an athlete for a specific sport. Because when they're 18, 90% of athletes are done with that sport. And then 99% of those athletes that go on to play college at 22, they're done. So what are they now? They're no longer an athlete. Can we get them to be a human being, a movement that, they can now use for the next 40, 50, 60 years of their life? So I'll sacrifice small gains for the athletic sport performance for huge gains, 24, 30, 40% for the rest of their lives that they can take back from me. So I want my athletes to enjoy the experience. I want them to enjoy I want them to understand and respect and understand how awesome the human body is. Like it's an incredible tool. It's the best gift that any of us have is our human body. Understand that it's not just for athletics. It's for expression, for creativity, for authenticity, for exploration. I want to give my athletes that. So that's my long term is like understand the human body is an incredible tool. Respect it, love it. Understand all the things that it can do, not just based for sports. And I guess that's kind of in a nutshell, kind of my philosophy on building athletes or just human beings long term.
Yeah, I like that approach, and I think a lot of people leave out, like you said, the time after sport, right? We're concerned with the peaking for sport, but what happens after? Because inevitably the ball stops bouncing for all of us at some point,
Yeah.
So I like that. I really like that. And then let's talk a little bit about you touched on your play-based model, right? For some of the younger kids. So will you expand on that and how you kind of come up with some of these drills and how you implement some of them?
Yeah. Human beings, we're a species of play. I know one of your last questions, one at the end, was what are your favorite quotes? And one of my favorite quotes is, you don't grow old when you stop playing. You don't stop playing when you grow old. You grow old when you stop playing. That's one of my favorite quotes. And so for all of my athletes, my adults, my youth, my high school, we play. It's a very play-based game where our athletes get the benefit that you see these kind of skills, those biomotor skills, through playing.
Okay.
And so for our youth group, it is very athlete driven. We give them a tool, we give them kind of a concept, and we want them to explore and create on their own. So we'll guide, facilitate that process, but we want them to own kind of that process.
Okay.
Again, with P being cut, with kids not going outside and playing as much these days, play is the missing piece of the puzzle that kids do not get.
Yeah.
We all crave, all ages of us crave play. At the end of the day, sports is just a game. It's playing.
Yeah.
So I want all the athletes to be open to playing a variety of different things. And so we generally have some sort of idea.
Okay.
But we give our athletes a lot of leeway to create and kind of create their own games and play. So a lot of things that people see on us on social media is actually a lot of it's derived from our athletes' own creativity and what they've kind of we give them certain tasks, tools, and kind of outcomes, and then they just create the rest of it. So a lot of it is just giving them the freedom and authenticity to create what they want.
I like that, and it kind of goes back to a couple principles of some things that go to long-term athletic development, right? So there's like play-based exploration, there's guided exploration, and there's outcome-based coaching as well. So I think that's really, really important because the kid, again, you're not maximizing their last 1% to 2% of athletic performance, right? You want them to have a longer term and develop a large category of movements, So I think that's really, really important, and some with adults too, because some of them have missed that stage. So to kind of go back and kind of check that box, I think it's really important,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I just got a question this past weekend about how do your adults perceive some of these games that you guys play?
Yeah.
Like 99% of the time, they love it. They never play it. They want to play it. Again, even these 40, 50, 60-year-old adults that have very stressful jobs, families, whatnot, they want to play. They, like I said, we're a species of play. That's how we that's a huge part of our social interaction. There's a huge cognitive load to playing, so we want to play as much as possible.
I like that. Okay. So let's kind of take a step back, right? So say you get a kid for the first day. What does like a typical assessment look like? Or even an adult, I guess. Yeah,
so it'll consist of your basic kind of table assessments. We'll take them through, see how their joints move on a table.
Yeah.
But, slowly as I've been going on, I've been kind of almost shying away from that, and I want to see them move. So a lot of our assessments, we're going to take them through a thorough warm-up, kind of one of our movement sessions. I want to see them how they move, kind of in a more dynamic and also by the end of it more of a fatigue state.
Yeah.
So that's where you kind of see really how they're generally want to move when they're not really thinking about it. And I think table assessments can be great, but at the end of the day, they're static. They're usually passive, and I want to see more dynamic, active, kind of an assessment evaluation of our athletes.
Okay.
So we do that, and then we have a sit-down conversation with the athlete, and if it's an athlete, their parents, and just to get to know them, see what their really goal is, what they want to get out of something like this, and then kind of just talk about kind of our philosophies and, like I said, how we approach our training. And so we want to set the standard from day one that this is how it's going to be. If you don't like it, you don't think it's serious enough for you, then you maybe find a different path for you guys. But we set our baseline, our guidelines right away at the start. And then, again, I want to hear from the athlete, see what they really want, their goals, their desires, their drives are. So we try to peel back the layers as much as possible that very first day. Because that gives us a lot of insight in how the athlete will respond to certain types of coaching, how they respond to certain types of environments, rather than just just a physical assessment. We want to do also kind of emotional, social assessment as well as the athlete.
That's huge. And I think a lot of people kind of miss that part, right? You do say something like a FMS or something else, and you get those numbers, but then you don't really know what kind of a person you're working with. You don't get the personality or anything, what they respond to. I think that's really important as well. And that kind of ties in, again, to the next question. What does a typical kind of strength training session look like? Or is there a typical session, or does it differ just depending on the client?
Yeah, so typical strength training session. So for our athletes, our sessions are typically anywhere from like an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Okay.
So it's a long session a lot of times. The first, easily 50 to 60% is our warm-up and movement.
Okay.
So one thing that we do differently, I guess, is we prioritize movement or speed and agility, for lack of a better term. So that's my emphasis.
Yeah.
Sport is based on movement. How can one express their movements to solve the problems in their sport? Mm-hmm. I view strength in the weight room as an accessory to my movement.
Okay.
So everything we do in the weight room has to complement our speed and agility work. That's how we approach it.
Yeah.
It's not the other way around.
Yeah.
It's not the strength and this power work of the weight room is the main stressor. That's our complementary stressor. Our main stressor for us in our session or our athletes is the speed and agility. That's what we prioritize. Everything in the weight room has to complement that.
Yeah.
So with that being said, our weight room is typically geared towards not necessarily trying to, drive out strength gains or even power gains. It's more like, can we create some tissue adaptations that can withstand the forces that go on into speed and agility?
Okay.
So a lot of tempos, a lot of getting ourselves in positions. Yeah. A lot of trying to help connect the weight room to the field, if you would.
Yeah.
So we take a pretty much I guess people would say it's a little bit more of a passive. I'm not real aggressive in the weight room. We're not trying to push loads too much.
Yeah.
Usually we're going to move something light very, very fast. I'm a big fan of loaded jumps. Yeah. We're going to move in different variations. So a lot of our lifts are like, we give the athletes, here, we're going to do a step up today. Yeah. But I want you to make every step up different. So we get a lot of variability and variety in a movement. So we're not like, I'm not a big stickler in technique, both on the field and our speed and agility and in the weight room. Yeah. I think there's a lot of bandwidth that I want my athletes to explore the end ranges of their technical models, if you would, there. So we give our athletes a lot of different freedom to explore and explore some variety within those movements, because that's how you create a robust, resilient athlete. So everything we do in the weight room, like I said, it has to complement our speed and agility work. So I guess that, again, and that depends on the athlete, the time of year, what we found from the assessments. Yeah. But our strength work is typically pretty short, sweet, not real aggressive in terms of loading. Yeah. But our intensity is high. We usually do some sort of tempo work as well. So we're controlling positions, we're owning positions for a certain period of time to create some tissue resiliency and robustness there. So that's kind of a general theme of what our strength work looks like. Yeah,
I like that. And I think I'm just imagining all the people freaking out right now because you said there's a variability within technique, So I think it's important to kind of dive in that you have to take that within context of what you said of, there's a movement literacy, right? We're exploring end ranges of motion. So it's all safe, but it's, we're not practicing for the 40-yard dash for the NFL Combine, So I think that's really important to key in on is, while everything is, there's a lot of range, it's all safe and it's all movements that they will be exposed to within play or within sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm saying I'm not going to, and we actually do, but for the most part, we're not going to put our athletes in a biomechanically unsound position, compromised position. Yeah. But say if someone's doing like a hex bar deadlift, we might say, hey, you got, it's 4 reps. I want each 4 reps different. So your stance might be narrow, wider, toe angle change, but those small little nuances rather than, here's how everyone in our group's got to squat. Yeah. So width apart, toes out at 10 degrees. Like, no, that's just a very unsound approach. Yeah. If we're doing some sort of squat, it might be, change your stance every single rep or every single set. We're going to just vary up your stance a little bit. So that's what I'm talking about for some variety and variation. Yeah. But we're not going to necessarily underload, put our athletes in a compromised position where they're breaking some of the biomechanical laws of joint health. So that's what I mean, by that variety. Yeah. Yeah.
No, and I like that. And that's almost like in a different context, it's almost like a Louie Simmons conjugate approach, right? He uses different stances, different styles. It's the same kind of idea. You want variation, you want variety, because you want that athlete to be, again, robust and adapt to multiple, have multiple stimuli. So I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, you're spot on there. I would say I'd rather have my athlete be able to, let's say, just a squat, for example, squat 20 different ways and feel comfortable and sound in those squats in 20 different ways than an athlete squat one way, but they're pushing the load and they're pushing intensity a ton. That's just my philosophy. It doesn't mean it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
But I'd rather have someone that can do 20 different things, 20 different stances, and still hit really good positions.
Yeah.
And feel very, very comfortable. Than an athlete just squatting one certain way, and the goal is just to push the weight.
Yeah.
That's just my philosophy.
And that's kind of our job as coaches, right? We're massively taking a generalist approach so that they can have specific. I mean, if we're talking about sports, so they can have specific success, right? So we have to take that generalist approach, because if not, then they become a power lifter or an Olympic lifter, which are good in their own respect, but that's not necessarily what we're after right here. So I think that's important, and I think it's a really interesting concept, because a lot of people forget about that and they don't think about that, in that context. So
yeah, absolutely.
I like that. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the speed and agility, right? But what does an energy training system, or what does the energy system development session look like kind of on day to day?
Yep. Great question there. So for a lot of our athletes, I don't place a huge priority on the ESD.
Yeah.
I'm definitely more of a high quality, high intensity, lower volume type guy.
Okay.
I'd rather have my athletes be very, very fast and powerful than attack some of these different energy systems with me.
Okay.
I still think, and people can disagree with this, that the sport is the best conditioner, if you would. So I always encourage my athletes to play sports or sports as their kind of energy system development, because nothing's more specific to their sport than playing their sport.
Yeah.
But I'd much rather have it, really shy in the way of ESD or conditioning and just really go towards this end of the spectrum where we're just going to maximize. We want to be as fast as possible. So again, my goal, like I said, is going to be really fast, powerful movers, speed and agility, rather than erring on the conditioning side. So that's just how I approach it. So what we do for ESD is not a ton. If we have an athlete's gearing up towards the season, when we're getting close, we typically, like say football, for example. The sad thing about football is that you don't prepare your athletes necessarily for the game, because you actually have to prepare your athletes for like fall camp. That's the worst time of the year. So a lot of times it's like we're not preparing our athletes for the game, unfortunately, because their fall camp or their preseason camp is probably the worst time of the year for them in terms of volume and intensity and just the frequency of how long they're going to and how often they're going to train. So we can look at the sport and break down the sport and try to attack it from an ESD standpoint from there. But oftentimes, when it comes close to the season, we're trying to prepare for for camp, because that's the most intense time of the year. So, but for the most part, outside those time frames, all we want to do is maximize speed. That's my goal. So like, I want you guys to be as fast as possible. We know that kind of maximizing speed in that regard, kind of like water raises all ships. That's kind of what we do for speed. So I'm not going to touch too much on the conditioning side of things or the energy systems side of things.
No, I think you're spot on with that as well, because if we're looking at Charlie Francis, right, so he was all about increasing that speed reserve, right? So like you said, if you increase speed, everything kind of naturally raises up. And again, if we're going back to kind of the generalist as far as all coaches, a lot of coaches focus on that conditioning, right? But then we have slow athletes that can do things for a very long time, but very not explosive at all, right? So what good does that do us? Spot on. And I personally, I think conditioning is one of the most overrated things in sport. And then when we do conditioning, here's the thing with sport. If you think about sport and the fatigue components of sport, it's not all physical. That's what people don't understand. It's mental, it's emotional, it's the ups and downs of the game. It's controlling your emotions, controlling when you're ahead, when you're behind. So there's so much more to fatigue and in sport than just physical conditioning. And so I think conditioning, in all of our athletes at all times of year could probably go out and play their sport without a problem. Most sports really aren't that physically taxing, if we're being really honest. Especially you go up to, if you're talking about like Power 5 and professional. I mean, go to an NFL football game. Like, there's a TV timeout every 4 minutes. These guys are barely on the field. I think in a college football game, the actual time athletes play is like 4 to 6 minutes. That's it. That's it. Like, we don't need a condition for 4 to 6 minutes. That's not that physically demanding. The thing that induces fatigue, especially in games, is that stress, anxiety, it's the mental, emotional fatigue of sport, much more than the physical side. So if we're going to do some sort of, I think in training, we often forget about that side of things. We don't address the emotional or the psychological or the stress and anxiety that comes with sport, where a lot of the fatigue comes from. All we do is we're going to address the physical. And so overall, I think conditioning for all sports is very, very overrated. And like you said, I'd much rather have my athletes be faster, have a higher speed reserve, than trying to,
eke out different conditioning things for the athletes.
Yeah, I like that. Okay. With your training, do you use any kind of technology or any kind of tracking or anything like that?
Yep. We use some. So for we do athlete questionnaires and wellness.
Okay.
Old school pen and paper.
Yeah.
We track every day. In terms of in the weight room, we have lasers, if you would, speed lasers, so speed gates.
Yeah.
We have a jump mat, and we have the G flight, which will measure ground contact time and also RSI.
Okay.
And then we have two velocity-based training things. So we'll use those as much as possible. I like them much more for like the augmented feedback.
Yeah.
Of driving motivation and kind of intrinsic feedback to the athlete, much more than maybe some of the research side of things.
Yeah.
So we like to put the like a VBT on an athlete and just give some immediate feedback on that repetition. We do a lot of we time a lot of sprints again for that kind of augmented feedback for the athlete. Knowledge of the results much more than us trying to give them knowledge of the performance. And so I use it much more as a feedback tool than maybe some of the scientific literature that's been out on them.
Yeah, I think it's kind of, for your setting, that makes the most sense, right? Because you can just get lost in data analytics and all that kind of stuff. But again, that takes time, and that's time away from you coaching your athletes, So I think, again, technology can be used in a multitude of ways, but in a setting like yours, or in most settings, honestly, augmented feedback is one of the best ways, because if you don't have someone to really dedicate their time to the numbers, you're only doing half a job there,
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
And I think in many of these ways, the technology is a much better coach than I ever will be. Like just telling an athlete what their jump height was or their time. Like that's better than anything that I could give them as a coach. Like the feedback that I could give them.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that over the last couple of years that I worked on a ton is like just saying less as a coach. Like, can I say less and less? I want to be much more of a facilitator and be hands off and let the athletes kind of own that experience and let maybe some of these technologies be the coach, because they're a much better coach than I could ever be. I can't give them feedback that just giving them a time could give them, letting them kind of internalize it. And who knows what I think. And this is something I struggle with. Like I honestly think that sometimes as coaches, and me especially, like, are my athletes performing because of me or despite of me? It's a hard question to ask all coaches, but in many cases I'm like, I think my athletes are, I might be doing a disservice to them by trying to step in and cure every little thing for them. And instead of giving them stepping off and letting them some time to work some of those kinks out themselves. So in the last couple of years, I've really been trying to step off, step aside, say less. But what I say be more meaningful. So if anybody watches me coach, I don't say much. Like I'm not like, if an athlete has a bad rep, I don't step in and say a whole lot. Like I think they know they had a bad rep, and they're probably going through some sort of checklist and how to correct it or what they did wrong and internalizing that. I just don't want to step in and then ruin that process, because on the sport, we're not there on the field holding our athlete's hand. Hey, you gotta have your left foot here to 45-degree angle, and then you gotta take this step. Like, no, they gotta own that. That's them. So as a coach, it's been really hard because because I used to be very hands-on coaching. You know, as we come up as coaches, what do we learn? Like, always be coaching.
Coach everything,
Constant, that's what you do as a coach. But I think that we kind of paralyze our athletes sometimes and handcuff our athletes from letting them own that process. So, that's something that I worked on.
Okay. I really love your thought process here. And so kind of dive in with that, right? What are some leadership opportunities or some continuing education opportunities that you personally enjoy or seek out?
Yes. Again, another quote, I know it's later in the questionnaire, but if it's important, do it every day. That's one of my favorite quotes. If it's important, do it every day. And for me, it's learning. Like, what can I do to help better my athletes? So, in terms of continuing education and leadership, I try to read for an hour every single day, whether it be literature, whether it be blog posts, whether it be books, whatever it may be. I try to read for an hour every day. I think there's so many good resources out there in terms of continuing education. For me, like research, like I maybe I'm weird because I enjoy to read research. I know a lot of coaches don't like that. But I love reading research, and so that's like you can get all that stuff for free basically, and then talking with coaches and getting books. But that's kind of the number one thing. I'll try to go into every week try to communicate with some sort of coach that I like what they're doing or admire what they're doing, or just kind of chop it up a little bit. But try to build your network, if you would, and just kind of communicate with coaches and see what they're doing. And then I love conferences and clinics, going to those as much as possible, whenever possible. In terms of online stuff, I think Office 360 is the best resource out there.
Okay.
It's only $300 a year, and it's like it's an incredible resource. I honestly think I don't get any kickback from this, but I think Office 360 is my favorite resource. I try to go in there at least once a week. They have all their poolside chats, all their presentations, a ton of stuff. And again, I have a track background, but it's not just track. It's all their guests. So they have a ton of speed, agility people. They have the monitoring technology people, field events, different sports, etc. So for me, Office 360 is a game changer, and I think it's a money well spent in my book.
Okay, I like that. And so you kind of answered this one a little bit, right? But if you have any more, what are some quotes that you kind of live by? You used them all up, didn't you?
Those are two of my favorite.
Yeah.
And again, I guess the last one would be, our athletes will never remember what you say or what you do, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. That's another one that I like to think about is we often get caught up in our training programs. Our cueing communication. And this template, but at the end of the day, they're only going to remember how you made them feel. They're with you. So that's another one I try to live by. Okay.
Is there a thought or experience from your past that you've kind of held on to that's made a big difference in your life now?
Yeah. Same thing, kind of that quote I just said. When I was a sophomore in high school, I had a track workout. I was a track athlete at that time. And a track workout with my coach, just me and him. It was a rainy day. We went out, and it was before, and where I'm from, Wisconsin, it was before like regionals and sectionals, which is the qualifiers for state. And I remember going through that workout. It was one of the worst, horrible workout, really, really hard. And the coach my coach, Coach Moss, didn't say much. But at the end of it, I got it done, did pretty well. And he basically said, he told me like what my time was going to be in my upcoming track meet. And I a week later, I hit that time. And I don't know, there's something about that thing where he said, you're gonna hit this. You're gonna hit this time. You just did the way it was just, he didn't say much the whole time. Like it was one of those where we only had a minute rest. It was repeat 400s with a minute rest in between at 65 seconds. And I just remember him just saying, get on the line. Like you never know. And it was like, it was very different for him in that sense. He's a very encouraging, positive coach. He just said, get on the line. And just went, all right. It was, I don't know, something about that day was a workout that I'll never forget. And at the end, he just said, you're going to run this time. What you did today. And I went out and ran the exact time. And I was just like, it was one of the coolest things that I've ever experienced. So that's something that I'll hold on to.
I like that. Okay. What is the best advice that you've ever been given?
The best advice that I've ever been given? Marry well.
Okay.
So my wife is wonderful. She's a rock in our relationship, and as coaches listening, and you would know, it's a hard job, a lot of hours, weekends. You have to marry up and marry the right person, and I'm fortunate that I have.
I love it. Okay, so in contrast to that, what is the worst advice you've ever been given?
And this is what I said earlier: is always be coaching. That's, I think, to me, the worst advice.
Okay.
To always be coaching, whether it be on the floor, or always try to have some sort of coaching. Session going on. That's how I started my career. And again, I've cut down sessions. I'm trying to get away from the on-floor stuff as much as possible to, because it does burn you out. It takes a physical, mental, emotional toll on you. So for me, enjoying time away from the facility and the coaching, to be with my family, be with my wife, spend time in nature, hiking. I like to do that kind of stuff. So. They'll always be coaching, whether it be on the floor, the actual like human communication, and then also like everyone's like, you got to coach as much, coach 80 hours a week. Like I think that's a little overblown as well. So that would be the worst advice.
Okay. So what projects are you kind of currently working on, and how can people reach out to you and kind of follow your journey?
So just our regular sessions. That's what I'm working on. Just again to give my athletes the best experience as possible in our sessions. Help. Grow and develop our business, reach as many kids in our area as possible. And some other, things I'm working on in terms of, I'm really into, I think as sport performance coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, I think one of the biggest areas that we can impact and influence a team is by communicating with our sport coaches about some of the nuances and importance of motor learning, skill position, how to set up practices, and how to set up indie, and how to cue and communicate, and those type of things. So I'm working on some things with football. again, one of the worst quotes that people always say, this is how we've always done it. We're doing this because this is how it's always been done.
Yeah.
And I think all sports are kind of like that. Like football is just like, we just do this because that's how I did it when I was in high school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Baseball, we're going to run poles. We're going to run 5 miles after pitching because it gets out lactic acid because that's how it's always been done. It's like, well, there's no scientific evidence to support anything that you're doing there.
Exactly.
So I'm trying to, work on a resource that allows me as a strength coach to impact the sport coaches, because at the end of the day, we're the ones that have the biggest influence. Really, how our athletes perform on game day. So, I'm trying to educate sport coaches on some of these nuances with skill acquisition, more learning, practice design. Okay? That's kind of where I'm going.
Okay, excellent. I mean, Coach, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate your time. And, once again, thank you so much. I think a lot of people are going to take a lot from it. I think this is going to make a lot of people think, because there's some ideas in here that not necessarily everybody is either privy to, or that people are, commonly exposed or even agree with, So I think this is really, really good. So again, I appreciate your time, and hopefully we connect again soon in the future.
Yes, well, I appreciate you having me on. I really do. Had great questions, and I appreciate what you're doing with this podcast. You're doing a really great thing. Just listened yesterday a couple of the podcasts and really enjoyed them. So I'm going to have to make sure I go through all of them here over the next couple of months. So appreciate what you're doing.